All right. So right here under reading in our under modules in Canvas, reading, we have three books. Architectural model making, which we might get into further down the line. Architectural graphics, which again, we'll probably get into later on. But what I want you to do is find the Rhino Level 1 training in English zip folder. So go ahead and select that folder. It should automatically download or begin to download, or it's going to take you to this page, and then you click this one to download it. Okay, so here it is. For me, I use Google Chrome. So when I download things in Google Chrome, typically it'll pop up very quickly as a small balloon up to the top right. If you're using another internet browser, you figure out where your downloads go. Ultimately, it goes into this downloads folder, and these are all my downloads that I've got. The latest one, I usually organize this all by date modified, so right here under Rhino Level 1 Training is that folder. Okay. This is a compressed zip folder, which means it has tons of information. It's actually a very heavy folder, but it's been squeezed and stuffed into a very tiny manila folder, and it's ready to explode and pop out. Okay, it's a zipped folder. When you get a compressed zip folder, you must extract all the information that's within it. Okay, so we're gonna right click and go to extract all. Okay. Now in this dialog box, I want you to pick a very good place to store it. I'm going to store it in my own Google Drive. This is the way I organize my stuff. Here's all my OCC stuff. All my classes are organized within these years. So here's 2025. I've got the summer 2025 courses, and then I've got Design Build 1 right here. I have a folder called Syllabus. That's where my syllabus lives. And this will be a folder called Reading. You can organize your folders however you want, as long as it's organized. Okay. So I'm going to select that folder. I'm going to hit Extract. It's going to extract all that information, and it's going to pop up right here in the reading folder that I just created. Now with this comes this PDF and this models folder. So let's look at the models folder. Within this folder are a bunch of Rhino models. The file type is a Rhino 3D model file type, or a 3DM, .3DM. Where's the marker? So 3DM, 3D model. These are all files that you can open up if you have Rhino. So if you're using the school computer here, these desktops, for the most part, should all have Rhino already installed. Okay. If you are at home, you're going to want to use a Porto. So to access a Porto in your internet browser, you're going to type in cccd.aporto.com, and you're going to log in. It'll, at least in the first time, it'll usually ask you for your credentials, which are the same credentials you used to sign up for this class. So if you're actually registered in this class, you have that information. A lot of times it's your email or just the first part of the email before the @ symbol. So for myself, it's tcrowley1 at cccd.edu. My password is my password that I set up. But once you get through that, you'll get into a Porto. And when you're not able to come into studio to get your work done, if you can't finish it here in class during class time, you can get it done at home via a Porto. And as you can see here, this is what a Porto looks like. It's got many different programs for you to be able to use. The one we're going to focus on at the beginning of the semester is this one right here, Rhino. It's in its own folder. Open it up, and then you can open up Rhino 8. Okay. Alternatively, You can check the syllabus. And where I highlight the software, right here under Rhino 3D, click on that one, and it takes you to the Rhino's website where you can either purchase a license as a student. So commercially, it's worth $1,000. 10 users is $10,000. Yada yada yada. If you're a student, it's only $200. Okay, for Windows or for Mac. But you can also get an evaluation trial that will last you 90 days. Okay, that's a very long time. So you can, if you have a personal computer, you can download Rhino 8 straight onto your personal computer and use it for 90 days with one email address or one login. Okay. If you run out of time in 90 days, sign up for another account, do it all over again, and you can do that forever and ever. At some point, if you're using Rhino that much, you're probably going to want to purchase it. Okay. So, as I mentioned in the last class, these are some of my recommendations. Instead of paying $200 through Rhino, you can get it through GoMeasure3D.com for $156. Or my unofficial recommendation is going through the Iowa State University bookstore for $95. Approach that at your own risk. I've heard of success, but it's my unofficial recommendation. Anyways, back to our extracted folder. That was our models folder within that thing. This one right here is the actual level 1 training manual. Okay. So here's what it looks like. Once you complete this manual, you're technically level 1 certified or trained. I'm not able to anoint you with a certificate. If you take Steve Fuchs's ARC A162 Rhino 1 class, he can anoint you with a certificate if you want one. But this is the whole entire level 1 training manual. It breaks everything down very simply. And as you can see here, it begins by diagramming everything for you, right, giving you all the verbiage. And these are all terms that I'm going to be using as best as I can throughout my lectures. So I want you to take a look at that. Once you get into, let's say, page 14 here, or sorry, 24, that's page 24 of the book, right? So if I go back to my PDF reader, I'm technically on page 26 of the whole entire PDF, okay? So on page 24 of the book is Exercise 1, Rhino Basics. To get started, download the Level 1 training models, which we've done. Unzip the downloaded file into Level 1 folder on your computer. All right. And then it instructs you to open up the start.3dm file. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back here, go to the models, and I'm looking for a start file. Here it is, Rhino start file. You can right click it, open with Rhino 8. Sorry, give me one sec. All right, so here we are. This is Rhino. Rhino is a CAD-based software. You use commands to initiate. You type in the commands to initiate any sort of movements. CAD is a computer-aided design program, right? Much like AutoCAD. That is a very specific program within the whole library of CAD software. Rhino works just like AutoCAD. In fact, it was started by a group who came from AutoCAD and when created Rhino. This is the story. So here in this startup file, I want to explain what we're looking at. Up top, I have my drop-down menus. Got File, Edit, View, Curve, Surface, Sub D, Solid, Mesh, Drafting, Transform, Tools, Analyze, Render, Window, Help. Okay, just a lot to intake, right? But many of the commands in Rhino live within these categories, right? We're going to get started through simple commands, two-dimensional commands. So we'll spend a lot of time in the curve drop-down menu. Eventually, we might move on to surface and then solid, where we're starting to make actual 3D digital models, much like the one we're seeing in front of us here. A lot of those same commands also live here in this toolbar. So right now I'm looking at the standard toolbar. And again, these are all categorized. This is C-planes, set view, display, select. This is just another place to access the same commands, but through a visual button. Okay. I'm just going to keep mine on standard. On the left here, I've got a general set of tools that are used pretty frequently. So they've got that there for you as well. All the way on the far right, I have it set up where I have all of my layers docked off to the far right. So these are my layers, much like in Photoshop and Illustrator, you can organize things into layers. I'm all about using layers in my Rhino files. It keeps everything super clean and organized. There are little icons I can move between these different tabs. So if I click on this little rainbow tab, these are properties. I don't have anything selected, so it's not really giving me any properties of anything. But if I were to select, let's say, this cube, here are the properties of this cube as it stands now. As an object, it is a closed solid poly surface. It does not have a name. The layer it is on is a layer called objects, and it's got display color, display mode, blah, 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 blah. Lots of information there. Nothing we need to know right now. But also, under the properties, I can look at its materials, texture mapping, displacement, edge softening. We're not going to worry about that. In the next tab, this is my display tab. This has to do with the actual active viewport. I am in this perspective viewport at the moment. I can tell because out of these three viewports, this one that says perspective is blue. That is my active viewport. Okay. Notice that this viewport here, top, and this viewport down here, front, are gray. Right? So the active viewport that I'm currently in is the perspective one. So these are all of the properties of that of the display of that viewport. This is the help button. Rhino has a wonderful help set of tools. So let's say I initiate a tool. Let's say let's do an extrude curve. Once you type in a command, right away, if you have the help active, it'll not only tell you where it's located, but also gives you a small little animation of how it works. The extrude curve command creates a surface by tracing the path of a curve in a straight line. Here are the steps to create that extruded curve. Here's what each command line option means. Okay. Help is actually very helpful in Rhino, so make sure you're utilizing that. And then I've also got name views and notifications. So now, within here, these three things are my viewports. On the far left, this one that's taking 50% of the space, this is my top viewport. So I'm looking at this 3D model. where it's got a cube and a cone, a cylinder, and a sphere, I am looking at those items directly from above, okay, in an orthographic type of view. What is orthographic? Orthographic means I am viewing these objects without any perspective. No 1-point perspective, no 2-point perspective, just a parallel projection from the top. Okay, so this viewport is doing that for me. On the bottom right, this is my front viewport, and I am now looking at these objects from their side. Which side? If we look at our top, we can see we have a cube, cone, cylinder, sphere. In the front viewport, I have that same order, right? Meaning that I'm down here in this vicinity looking this way at these 4 objects in my front viewport. And then, of course, in our perspective viewport, we are looking at it with perspective. There is some sort of vanishing point or two, and I am seeing it in 3D. It is not an orthographic view. It is not a parallel projection. So that's what all of those mean. So let's go 26. All right. So in this file, we're going to go ahead and right-click perspective, and we're going to change the display mode, which currently is active as wireframe. We're going to change it to shaded. Now in shaded view, you're getting some shadows, you're getting a little bit of light play. Things are displayed as solid things instead of seeing just the wires. Okay. Now if I go to the render menu, I can click on render, and it's going to bring up this dialog box, and I can choose to save this image as a rendering, and it's currently rendering it using the material properties of each of these objects, right? Remember we looked at the properties of the cube and looked at the materials, right? It's got a custom blue. This cube has a custom blue texture, right? That's got some gloss to it. That's what we're seeing here. So we're seeing it in shaded view in perspective, but we're seeing it in the rendered view here in the rendering. So I'm going to close that. Now in the perspective viewport, I can click and drag with my right mouse button held down to rotate the view. Let's double click perspective. That's a left click, 2 left clicks. And if I click and drag the right mouse button, I can perform what is called an orbit, okay, which is allowing me to spin this model around so that I can view it from all angles. And I'm just right click and dragging it around as needed. And that's how I can navigate around this file. Let's try X-ray mode. I'm going to go to perspective, right click, go to X-ray mode. Now I can sort of see through these objects just a little bit. I can see through the sphere and I can see the shapes behind it. Let's check out technical. Technical mode shows it more of it as a technical drawing. So whatever edges we do perceive, it's got a heavier line weight than these dashed hidden lines that we cannot perceive. We've got an artistic mode. We've got a pen mode. Okay. You can create some nice renderings of your object in a very simple way. There's Arctic mode. In Rhino 8, there's ray traced, which is very heavy on your computer, but it's actually ray tracing and creating this rendering for you as it as you navigate around the file. So it's actually putting a lot of stress on your computer. Um, monochrome. Okay, monochrome's got some shadow on it. So those are the different display modes that you can utilize here in Rhino. Let's do, if you press on the home key on your keyboard, it'll return you back to the view the way you had started, or to some sort of starting point, just like that. Now to zoom in and out, you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse, or sometimes I call it the middle wheel button, because you can actually usually press this button down. But if you just scroll in and out, you're zooming in and out of your view. Okay, so I can orbit. Let's look at this cube much closer. Let's zoom out. I can orbit again, zoom in. If you ever get to a position where maybe you're too close and you just can't get out of there, you can type in a command called zoom extents. Z-O-O-M-E-X. See, oh, sorry, just zoom. Click on zoom, and then there are some subcommands, and I'm going to click on extents, and it's going to zoom me right back out, and it's going to show everything that's in this Rhino file and zoom it in perfectly for me right in the center. So let's talk about the gumball. What is a gumball? To have the gumball active, down below, you'll see gumball seaplane. Make sure that it's active. I can tell it is active because relative to the other buttons near it, this one is blue and it's also bold. So when I select any of its objects here in Rhino, you're going to see a blue, green, red arrow, and also these little arcs that are each of those different colors, and this little dashed lines with these little squares and this little grid. That is the gumball. What can you do with the gumball? If I click and drag this red arrow, it's going to move that cylinder relative to that direction of that path of that arrow. That arrow is running in it's probably a X axis. I go back to shaded. I'm not seeing my display. Okay, so the red one allows me to move along this X or Y axis. The green one allows me to move in that axis. The blue one allows me to move up in the Z. So I can move up, I can move down, and just click and drag it and move it around just like that. Okay. Next thing I want to do. Let's go ahead and start using some commands. I'm going to move. I'm going to undo. Click on this little button here, or type in undo, or use a Control-Z to undo. We're going to move some of these items around. I'm going to select the cone, and you can click and drag it wherever you want. If you notice, I'm kind of constrained to moving in straight left and right and up and down directions. That is because I have ortho on. Ortho constrains your movements in 90-degree increments. So I can only move objects up and down or left and right, but I can't move them diagonally. I can't move them at a 22.5-degree increment. I'm stuck moving it only left to right and up and down. If you turn it off, you'll be able to click and drag it in any direction you want, just like this. What we're going to do is I want to eyeball this and put the cone on top of the cylinder. Now, typically we use the software to precisely move one object to another object, But in this case, just for your first time, we're just going to move it and drag it somewhere near where it needs to be. So here's my cylinder, and here's my cone. I am in the front viewport. If I zoom in, I can click and drag and try to place it right on top of the cone. I mean the cylinder. Right? Now here in the front viewport, it looks like it is right on top of that cylinder, right? But if I select that cone, I can see it here in top view. It is not on top of that cylinder, right? It is above the cylinder, but in front of it. It's way over here. The cylinder is here, and the cone is here. So now I'm going to utilize this top viewport, and I'm going to drag this just about right there. And now in the perspective viewport, I can see I've successfully moved my cylinder on top of my cone on top of the cylinder. Okay. If I undo that, undo, undo, undo. Now in Rhino, we're looking for precision movements. If I wanted to place this cone on top of this cylinder, I would want it exactly on the surface of that top of that cylinder. So I'm going to use a command called move. To initiate this command, you can go to transform and click move, and that will execute the move command. Or if you look here in the command line, it says move. That's the actual command. So if I hit escape 2 times, I'm going to type in move and hit enter. That will also initiate the move command. Okay. I want you guys to get used to using commands instead of finding their icons or drop-down menus. So we're going to do move. In the command line, it's saying select objects to move. So Rhino, being a command-based software, as you initiate a command, it will communicate with you what needs to happen to make that command work. So it's constantly communicating with you as you communicate with it. It says select objects to move, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this cone, and then in the command line it says select objects to move, press enter when done. I am done selecting what I want to move, so I'm going to hit enter. Now it says point to move from, so I need to define a very specific point on this cone to which I want to move it from. And what I want to do is I want to move it from the center of the base. Okay. To do that, I need to use my O snaps. An O snap is an object snap. So within all this geometry, we have all types of points that we can snap to in these shapes. And those are called O snaps. We have end, near, point, mid, center, intersection, perpendicular, tangent, quad, knot, vertex, project. Those are just some of the points that we can actually snap to. Here on the bottom, I have end, near, point, mid, center, intersection, and perpendicular all checked. Those are all active. So the point that I'm going to move from is going to be the center of the base of this cone. To find that center, I need to hover my cursor anywhere around the edge of that base, and then it'll snap to a very specific point, and a small little tooltip will pop up that says CEN, which stands for center. So I can click that, and it's identifying the center of the base of this cone. So I'm going to make sure I find center. Click it once, and now in the command line it says point to move to. I would like to move it to the center of the top of the cylinder here. So I'm going to hover my cursor over the edge of the cylinder until I find the cylinder's center of that face. And once it gives me that snap point and that tooltip, I'm going to go ahead and click it. And now I have successfully, perfectly placed the cone on top of the cylinder. So the next thing I want to teach you all is copying. I'm going to go to the top viewport. To copy an object, we're going to go to transform and copy. The command line says to select an object to copy. So I'm going to copy this cube. I'm going to select it. It says press enter when done. I will press enter now that I'm done. And I'm going to need to define, according to my command line, a point to copy from. So I'm going to copy it from just out here in the grid. Nowhere specific, just way out here away from the cube. And I'm going to click once to define that point. And now the command line says point to copy to. So as I move my cursor away from that original point I created, it is now copying that cube from one spot to another relative to where my 2 points are. So my point to copy from, and now my point to copy to. So I'm going to select that second point. I'm going to press enter when I'm done. And now I've got 2 cubes and a cylinder with a cone on top. In this exercise, which you'll try out, it shows you a castle. So if I navigate all the way back down here, right here. So with these same tools, you can come up with something similar to this, just as a warm-up exercise. Okay. So that's the first assignment that you'll all do. Okay. Once you're done with this assignment, as I am done now too, I want you to screenshot this and submit it for the assignment. I'm going to double click on the perspective viewport, and the way I want you to screenshot it is using the snipping tool. If you're using a PC. If you're using a Mac, I'm sure there's some sort of equivalent, but if you're using a PC, snipping tool. So to activate the snipping tool, click on the Windows Start button, type in snipping, and then you'll find this app, Snipping Tool. It should already be on your computer. It's usually there by default. And then this dialog box will pop up. Click on New. And now all you need to do is define your rectangle that you want to screenshot. Okay. And this is what it's produced for me. The next thing you want to do is click on this little floppy disk, or do a Control S to save as. And I'm going to save it. I'm going to find a good place for it. I'm going to organize it into my Google Drive or onto my flash drive. Summer 2025 design build. I'm going to make a folder for assignments. You can organize your folder however you want to. And I'm going to place it in this folder, but before I do, I need to do 2 things. I need to give it a proper file name, and I want to make sure I'm saving it as either a JPEG, a JPG, or a PNG. So here's the file name. I'm going to use 250611. This is going to be assignment 2, so I'm just going to put A2. And this is going to be Rhino, intro to Rhino. You can name it whatever you want as long as you remember what it is. And then a dash, and then my initials. Okay, now I know the date, I know what it is, I know what assignment number it is, I know who did it. I'm going to save it as a JPG or PNG and hit save, and it's going to save it to that folder. And once you get to it, you can start the Canvas assignment and just submit that screenshot. So that is the basic introduction to Rhino. I'm going to assign you not only this exercise, but a few others to do as well. That'll be due next Monday, bright and early at 8 in the morning. So you have all weekend to get this done. And you can stick around. Today I have a class at 1 p.m. And so you can stick around until then and get that done. That class runs from 1 to 4:30. If you want to stick around and get that stuff done and use these school computers, you're more than welcome to stick around and do that. Otherwise, you have a Porto, or you can download and purchase Rhino yourself for your own personal computer. I'll post this on my YouTube channel for you all to watch later on.